This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by ADR Mixer James Gregory, whose work includes Fleabag, Matilda, and Killing Eve, just to name a few. Welcome to the show, James.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I guess I noticed when I was researching your stuff that you've also done a lot of video games, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
What would you say is the difference for an ADR mixer from working on a TV and film project versus a video game?
The video game recording process is very it's very quick fire. There's a lot of kind of repetition in it and stuff like that, as well as in ADR mixing as well. But it's just recordings. There's never really any playbacks unless you're playing back for an edit or something like that to take a breath out or something. It's very kind of, you have 200 cues to get through and you just get through them. Whereas ADR, it's and not to kind of like diminish recording dialogue for video games or anything like that, but with ADR, you're kind of you're obviously recording and then playing back and mixing to a certain degree, obviously not to the skill set and to the kind of like polish that a mixer will finalize something in, but you are playing back to kind of like convince everyone in the room that the ADR is going to work. So you're going to mix back, maybe take some EQ out and kind of fill the guide track, so when you play back everything sounds right. But with video game recording, it's very isolated. That's the cue, maybe top and tail it, and then it's off to the developer, who will then integrate it into the software or whatever.
And so does that, for video games, do you find that it's like you're essentially getting like a clean recording and then letting someone else like dirty it up if it needs to be dirtied, or making it sound like it's part of an environment, or is it
exactly
yeah?
So the process would be to get the cleanest recording you can get with movement and action in it, if the recording if the script calls for it. So you'd have to obviously mic them up in a certain way that movement and stuff like that wouldn't be an issue. And then, so the cleanest recordings with nothing, kind of no mess on it. And then obviously, like you said, can be dirtied up and put into the, my knowledge of video game development is not great, but the way that they integrate the sound into the software, that all that processing is done on the other side, obviously.
I got into sound designing at a point when things were just developing. I was really fascinated by the idea that dialogue, effects, music were all components of the soundtrack to a film, which had never occurred to me before. What gets me excited is coming up with sound ideas that do match picture, but also is not just the equivalent of what you're seeing on screen. I'm Eugene Garrity, and this is my course on sound design.
Now I watched a show last year and I loved it. And when I was going through your IMDb, I saw you worked on it, which is Pistol.
Okay.
Or Pistols. So I want to know, like, what was your, like, you were ADR mixer on it, but like, what were some of the things you had to tackle in that show to redo? Like, I'm assuming they didn't play the instruments live, or else that would have been really hard to fix.
Yeah, to be fair to I mean, the work I did on Pistol, I maybe did probably like 2 hours worth of work on it. So what everyone else did on that show, with the kind of like obviously the recording on set to them playing their instruments, I don't know, I wasn't involved in the mix process, so you don't know how much of that kind of like, did they mime when they were on set, did they mic up the amps and stuff like that? I wasn't privy to that. The only thing that I did do that was mildly creative when I recorded some of the actor who played Johnny Rotten, was just use an SM58 instead of a normal kind of like you'd use your boom mics, which might be your like 416, and then your lav mic, and then you chuck up a stage mic like an SM58, because there was one bit where he was screaming into the microphone and you want to get that recording from that microphone, because that microphone is completely different from a boom mic or a lav mic.
Yeah.
It sounds like that mic. You can't. There are processes that you can do post that makes other mics sound like other mics, but you might as well get it right at source. So the only thing creative, and I did very minimal work. The fact that's on my IMDb is kind of a tragedy, because I'm taking credit away from a lot of people who did much more work on it than I did.
You'll have to go report yourself.
Exactly. But no, we'd all be reporting everyone.
Yeah.
Because we take credit for a lot of things that we did minimal work on.
So when you're working to do like an ADR session, like how much of it is you sort of trying to figure out to get the perfect take, and how much is like the directors there sort of directing them? Because some sessions I've been in, it's like the directors, the other side of the world, and other sessions they're right there guiding them. So how much do you take on from a creative perspective in getting the perfect take?
It's all about, it's like it's room kind of politics and stuff like that. Like you said, with the director might be on the other side of the world, and you might be right there. Obviously, I've always taken a very passive kind of view on how I am in the room. My opinion is the last one to be offered. So, but there are certain ways, if you can see like an actor is struggling to get a line, there are certain techniques you can offer up and say, maybe we do it this way, maybe we do it that way. But you only I'm never really kind of forthright on my opinion until everyone's had their say and we're all struggling. So then I'll step up and go, maybe we do this, maybe we do that. But it's much nicer to have everyone in the room, because the creative process is obviously much easier. But to be honest, everyone's so good these days. It's very rare that you have to say anything. You can only there's certain things that make the microphone sound different. So sitting down, standing up, moving around, all that kind of stuff, that makes the perfect take sound much better. You can get something that's like bang in time and the right performance, but if there's no movement in it, and if their head's not turning, or if their like diaphragm's not compressed when it is compressed in the shot, it just sounds different. So you try and offer that up, but to be honest, you could probably get away with it.
Now you've mentioned certain things in there, like the compression of the diaphragm and what have you, but when you've recorded some stuff, how do you approach it to try and get it to sound like the original material that might be outside or near a waterfall or something crazy?
Well, especially at the ADR stage, nothing's ever finalized. So you got guide tracks, obviously. So you're working with guide tracks, and they come from the edit. So they might have taken the boom mic and then 3 lav mics from characters that are in the scene. And then all you've got is like that compressed together with, like you said, like the waterfall. So in that scene, to make the ADR kind of work in the room at that time, obviously it's going to go to the mix stage. Well, even before that, it's going to go to the dialogue edit stage. They're going to fix it. And then it's going to go to the mix stage. They're going to fix it. So you're at the kind of raw end of it. So you try and find something in that scene, in that guide track, those 2 WAVs that you get, maybe more if you're lucky, and you try and find some fill. So you get some fill, which is basically just like the atmos of the stage or of the location that they're at, that's got waterfall on it, which is very distinct. And then you just try and plonk that over the guide track where that mod of the dialogue is, and then match up the ADR and all that kind of stuff. So you haven't got that dropout in guide. So then you've got the ADR coming in, there's no dropout. And because you've got all those microphones together, you're going to get some sort of phasing and some sort of EQ kind of discrepancy. So might take out some of the bottom end on the playback and some of the high end, because otherwise your microphones are going to sound too clean. Because your boom in a lovely room like this in Harbour in the UK, it's going to sound clean and it's going to sound very nice. But everything on location kind of sounds like trash a little bit. But that's the beauty of it. Yeah. And like when you hear that clean, from trash to clean to trash, it's very difficult and it's jarring, and that's what will like peak out and stuff. So you've got to kind of dirty it up to sell it, and you've got to sell it to the actor and the director and the dialogue editor in the room, so they know that once they go further down the stage of the dialogue editing and the mixing, it's only going to get better. It's only going to work more and more and more.
Now, what's interesting is you sort of touched on something, and it's completely a random thing that just caught my attention. But like you talked about, you do your work as the ADR mixer and then you send it off to the dialogue editor. I'm in Canada right now, and what I found here is that a lot of times the ADR mixer is also the dialogue editor.
Oh.
And the other weird thing I found is the Foley artist in Canada has to cut their pieces in themselves, whereas in the States, they record a bunch and send it off to the editor to make the decision. So have you worked on international projects and seen differences in your role like that before, or is it?
You tend to see freelancers, and in facilities, you tend to see the division of roles. You tend to see the kind of like the Foley artist and then the Foley editor, and then not necessarily the Foley mixer. I've never really seen that, but that tends to be the person that records the Foley that the Foley artist is doing. It's only in the freelance world where you see people who are ADR mixers and dialogue editors. So they'll mix the ADR and then they'll do it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like taking on multiple roles to make the project work, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But no, I've never seen. I personally have never come across that. But I've lived in a very sheltered world where I've never been freelance. So I'm sure they exist, and I'm sure they're very talented.
Now, what was it that attracted you to ADR mixing? Because I feel like when students are going into school, they're thinking, oh, cinematography, or I'm going to record all the big bands or what have you that are like huge. And not many people are aware that's, outside the industry that's what like is there, that ADR mixing is there. So what is it that attracted you to it?
I think it's that fact that it was weird. I've always loved recording studios. I've been in and out of recording studios since I was like 14 years old. So the idea of like recording anything professionally, I mean, I was a musician and do play music and stuff like that. So when you record something and then you can manipulate it or do something to it or whatever, that was always fascinated me. And being in recording studios, it's just that atmosphere that I just enjoy, the silence to a certain degree. And with ADR, it was the kind of the tricking nature of it, the way that you could take something and do it again. And if you're really good at it, well, if the actor's very good at it and everyone's on the same page or whatever, you can make it perfect. You can do it again. You can like, it's like the kind of like the trick of cinema, and the trick of like, it was just kind of fun. And plus I'd been a mix assistant before, and I'd seen the whole process of mixing and finaling something and being with clients in reviews and stuff like that. And that took the shine off the apple for being a re-recording mixer. I wanted something that was a little bit more kind of, that changed every now and again. Like every day was different. Every client was different. Every actor was different. I liked that kind of like interaction, and it was kind of more fast paced. And it's, and you get to meet some incredible people.
What was your instrument in the band?
Oh, see,
Oh, I'm a bass player.
Oh, yes. Best people are bass players.
Yeah, exactly. So now, what would you say is your most like, was a scene or a moment that you had to record or mix that was really difficult, but you're really proud of the outcome?
That's the thing. When I saw with this job, it's a weird thing where it's very difficult to take credit for anything, and very difficult to kind of like be proud of something. You could be proud of something in the room at the time. Excuse me. But because I've been a mix assistant, that ADR doesn't necessarily make it all the way through. It might be really good, and you might have like nailed it, and the actor might have nailed it, and everything's great. But because the director or the editor or the EP or whatever has lived with the sync for so long off the guide tracks, they just want to go back to it. They don't care if it's dirty and it doesn't, and it's off mic or whatever, because at the end of the day, that is true. If that bit of dialogue conveys the emotion in the scene, then that's what works. So that's fine. So it's very difficult, like I said, to know when you watch something that goes out and go like, I did that, and that's great. But having said that, I did do some recordings in my previous job, at my previous facility. I did get to work on Andor. And if you work on Star Wars, I'm proud of that. Even if it didn't make it in the final show or whatever, I don't know. I'll never know. but I worked on Star Wars. So little James, very happy.
Were you a big Star Wars fan as a kid?
No, but it's just that industry. It's that gold standard kind of thing. Even if it might not be everyone's cup of tea or whatever, it's just like that is, I don't know. It's just like, I haven't worked with Spielberg. I'd love to. Hello. But but until that day, it's always going to be Star Wars, unfortunately.
Now, I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
See, I don't really have, when it comes to guilty pleasures, it's just like you either like it or you don't like it kind of thing.
Yeah.
I guess there's like the shame of it, I guess, maybe. But it's like, I think anything, I don't know. It's weird. Like something that I don't know. I think anything, regardless of quality, anything that Nicolas Cage is in, doesn't matter if it's terrible or if it's good or whatever. I just love watching that man. I think he's incredible, and his career decisions are baffling. And
you mean buying a dinosaur head or whatever it was?
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
It's baffling.
You want your celebrities to be slightly
out there. Crazy.
Yeah.
Now wait, what kind of music did you play when you were in your band?
So I was I mean, the music that I played and the music that I was into are completely different things, basically. But I was in England in the early 2000s, like around 2002, 2003. There was a big like indie pop kind of like Britpop resurgence. Yeah. So I was in one of those bands.
Oh, wicked.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for letting me interview today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com or on Twitter at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Brickell. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.